What's up guys, Douglas from dugsterbob.com here, and today we're going to take a look at the 2022 Colt Control. This is Colt's second most expensive BMX bike. It's right under the Devotion, and it's actually fairly decent quality. I think the quality is a little bit better in 2022 than it was in 2021, but this could have just been because of a miscommunication on Colt's end when talking about the specs of the bike. But basically, we're going to dive deep, we're going to look at the specs, the geometry, and I'm going to help you figure out if this is the right bike for you. So let's get right into it. Now the Colt Control is actually a fairly decent bike. It's going to cost right at $500. It comes in two color options. It comes in a black and it comes in a raw. So it doesn't come in any flashy colors kind of like the Devotion did. These are just real basic black raw colors. Pretty classic for Colt. They don't usually do too many crazy color options. So $500, two color options, and yeah, there's not too much else to say for it. It's about $70 cheaper than the Devotion, but it still comes with pretty decent quality. So the quality of the Colt Control is actually pretty decent. It's going to come with a full chromoly frame. This is a lot stronger than a high tensile steel frame, which can bend and break depending on the amount of abuse that you put the frame to. Full chromoly frame is definitely the way to go, so this is off to a great start. The forks are going to be some chromoly, some high tensile steel. The steer tube, that piece of tubing that runs through the top of the frame, is going to be full chromoly, while the legs are going to be high tensile steel. And I've had this issue with high tensile steel leg forks before. When you're doing disasters, when you're doing dirt jumps, you can case it and those fork legs bend out. If you look at somebody on a lower end bike at your skate park, you might notice that instead of being like this, their forks are tilted like this. And that's just because they've taken some abuse and they're not full chromoly legs. So while this is a little bit better than full high tensile steel, it's still not the best because those legs can bend and over time, okay? Now, one thing to note is that these rims on the Colt Control are not both double wall. If you take this information off of Colt's website, they're gonna list all of their rims as Colt match rims. And while this is partially true, it's a little misleading because Colt match rims are generally known as their double wall aftermarket rims. But Colt also, essentially white labeled their single wall rims that come on complete bikes as Colt match rims, and they don't clearly distinguish which ones are Colt match double wall and which ones are Colt match single wall. So Dan's Comp on their website, they definitely made it really clear for you guys while you're buying a bike that the single wall rim is up front and the double wall rim is in the back. This is similar to some of Sunday's bikes where they did a single wall rim up front and a double wall rim up back. Having this is a little bit better because the back rim does take a lot of impact when you're doing spins, when you're doing big drops. The back rim is going to take the majority of impact. So having a single wall front rim isn't the end of the world, although getting a bike with two double wall rims is a better option. Okay, so I've had a lot of people argue with me last year because it's not clearly marked which one's single wall, if they're double wall or whatever. This is the deal. The Colt Control has a single wall front rim and a double wall back rim. Again, that's not a deal breaker because your front wheel, unless you nose case something, which you're going to hurt a lot of stuff nose casing something, it's not the end of the world, okay? But it is not double wall. So there you go. We're going to settle that. And the weight isn't really out yet, but if you go off of the 2021 Colt Control, this year's Colt Control is going to weigh about 25 pounds. And this isn't with any pegs, no hub guards, okay? So 25 pounds, no pegs, no hub guards, full chromoly frame, partially chromoly forks, and single wall in front, double wall rim in back. This is it's okay quality. It's not the best, obviously, but this is only a $500 bike priced for newer riders who are approaching the mid-level. Now we got the quality out of the way. That's a lot of information. Let's talk about the geometry. So the Colt Control has a 20.75 inch top tube. This is a 1/4 of an inch shorter than the Colt Devotion, and it's really, really, really important. I cannot stress it enough. It's really important to get the correct top tube size. A lot of people say, hey, this is only a 1/4 of an inch. Does it really matter? And the answer is absolutely. I switched from a 21 to a 20.7 inch top tube, and I noticed the craziest difference you just could not even imagine. It really makes a difference. And so what I want you to do is you need to Google Dougsterbob size guide, and that's going to take you to my website, and it's going to have the size guide listed out. Click on the height and it'll tell you pretty much 3 different frame size options and how each size is going to affect your riding. So for example, if 20.75 is the perfect size for you, it's going to balance stability and it's going to balance responsiveness. But if you're a little bit taller, getting a 20.75 is going to feel a lot more responsive. And it's really important for you to understand that before you buy the bike. So double check that, okay? Double check that that's the right size for you. The Chainstay is also a little weird because it's a 13.65 inch chainstay. This is one of the biggest chainstays that I've seen. The Colt Devotion is the same, and some of Haro's bikes have really long chainstays. What the longer chainstay is going to do is it's going to make the bike more stable in the back end. So spins are going to feel a little more sluggish, and it's just not going to be as responsive. It's going to be harder to pick the bike up for manuals, but once you're in a manual, it's a lot easier to control because it's not going to loop out as easy as a shorter chainstay would. The standover height is unknown. They haven't listed what the standover height is. I'm going to guess it's right around 9 inches, just like last year's model. And the head tube angle is 75 degrees. This is the exact same as average head tube angles. Okay, this is an average head tube angle size. So next thing we need to talk about is the Dougsterbob scores. Now, this is a scoring system that I created to help you figure out how each bike does in different areas of BMX. You can see how it performs in park, in dirt, in street, how the quality is, and then you can compare it to like 80 different bikes. So if you want this score sheet, the link is in the description. Just put in your email address and I'll send it to you, and then you can compare whichever bike you're looking at to a ton of different bikes. It's really helpful. But anyway, let's just get right into the Colt Controls Dougsterbob scores. In the street section, it only scored a 3. Now this is a 3 out of 10, and keep in mind, very few bikes score as high as a 10. They've got to hit a lot of marks to score that high. So a 3 in the grand scheme of things compared to like the Kink Launch, this is an okay score. A lot of these beginner bikes are not specific in one area, and the Colt Control is not specific for street because it doesn't come with pegs, it doesn't come with a free coaster. There's a lot of things that it doesn't come with right out of the box. Street riding is still possible with it. You just have to do a few upgrades for it. So in the park section, the Colt Control only scored a 1.67. We're going to go ahead and round this up to a 2, but this is not a park specific bike. To be park specific, we're looking for a really responsive geometry and some gyros, things like that. This bike, you cannot put gyro tabs on it because of the hourglass head tube, so you're not able to run a gyro. It's got that really long chainstay. Overall, it's not going to be very snappy or responsive in the park. However, in the dirt section, it scored a 4.33. We're going to round this down to a 4. This is actually a fairly decent score. There's some dirt specific bikes that scored a lot higher. But as a beginner bike, this bike is perfect for riding pump tracks and riding small tabletop dirt jumps because that bigger chainstay and that bigger geometry is going to make it feel really stable and really controlled. Now for quality, it scored a 4.5. This is because of the full chromoly frame and the partial chromoly forks, but the single wall front rim and the other high tensile steel aspects of the bike bring the quality score down just a little bit. Now this score is significantly higher than a lot of the $300 to $400 bikes, but it's nowhere near those $1,000 bikes, obviously. This is a pretty good quality score, and like I always say, I'm always looking for full chromoly frame, forks, and bars. This hit the mark on the frame, not quite the forks and not quite the bars, so it's getting there, but it's just not quite there, what I look for a mid-level quality bike. For a beginner level quality bike, this is a really good option because it's going to last you into the beginning of mid-level riding, which is when you're doing bars, you're doing whips, you're doing 360s, and you're doing tricks like that. Some similar options to the Colt Control would be the Sunday Primer, which is a lot lower quality option. It's a little bit cheaper, or the Kink Whip. And overall, the Kink Whip is going to be a little bit higher quality because it's going to come with full chromoly frame, forks, and bars, and double wall rims, and it's right at the same price. So those are some other bike options that you really should check out before you make the purchase of the Colt Control. Now, if you love Colt, you love the colors, like That's awesome, but I do want to let you know that there is some better priced options with a little bit better quality. Make sure you check those out. Now, potential issues. Some of the potential issues that I see with the Colt Control I've already discussed. I think you need to be careful when you start progressing and you're doing big jumps or big gaps because those forks and those high tensile steel bars can bend over time. Now, again, it's a lot different for me, a 215-pound person versus a 120-pound rider on the bike. Obviously, it's going to take a lot more abuse from me than someone who's smaller. So just kind of think about those things though, is that this bike is not really high quality and you're gonna out progress it if you're serious about BMX and if you start riding a ton. And that's just something that happens. So just be ready to upgrade those parts as you go so that you don't keep breaking things. Who is the Colt Control for? So the Colt Control is for somebody who likes to ride street and likes to ride dirt. If you plan to ride street, make sure you have a little bit extra money that you can upgrade some pegs, some hub guards, and maybe even a free coaster. If you like to ride dirt, I definitely recommend upgrading to dirt specific tires. This person is the perfect size for a 20.75 inch top tube, and they have about $500. The person who gets this bike should be riding for a little bit, but it's also not a bad brand new bike for a beginner as long as it's the right size for you. Now, it is not for somebody who's already riding at a mid-level and beating bikes up. There's a lot of better option bikes for people who are riding at a higher level. This is for someone who's pretty new to the sport and just figuring out some of the basic tricks. Now, would I recommend the Colt Control? And I would, if you can't afford the Colt Devotion or if the Colt Devotion is too big. I do really like the Colt Control, and to be fair, I think some of the components, the quality of the components are just a little bit better than Kink. This is all subjective, but a lot of people love Colt because of their quality and because of how authentic they are to the sport. So Colt's a really cool brand to go with. Now, if you're really looking for the best value bike, this wouldn't be it because it's not full chromoly, it's not double wall rims, and it's about $500. So you could get something like the Kink Whip for a little bit. The Kink Whip would be a little bit higher quality for about the same price. But other than that, these are two of the best options for the $500 price point and for beginner to mid-level quality. So I do recommend this bike if it's the right size for you and if you love Colt. If you're looking for something best value, there's a better option for sure. And now if you decide to buy this bike, I'm gonna put a link in the description to the place that I found it for the cheapest. It's probably gonna be Dan's Comp because we have a really good relationship and we both want to get you on the perfect bike. If you guys find it anywhere else, let me know so that I can update that link to be the cheapest option. But for now, at the time of making the video, this link in the description is going to be the cheapest option for the 2022 Colt Control, so make sure you check it out there. If you're still unsure about which bike to get, I want you to download or fill out the free BMX bike recommendation. This is a system that I created. You just put in your name, your budget, your skill level, your height. I look at all this information and then I'll send you back a recommendation with 3 bikes that I think are perfect for you. Is the Colt Control going to be on there? You will just have to wait and see. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know which bike I should review next, and have a great rest of your day.